the purposes of our fireside chats are multiple. One of them is really to connect across the country in our ElderDog community, and to really keep the channels of communication open between the board and the pods across the country. And the third really is to provide kind of a big picture look at ElderDog that you may not have an opportunity to see as you engage in your important role with ElderDog in your location. So we thought that it would be a really good opportunity to kind of get a sense of the complexity of ElderDog as an organization, and to address kind of the bigger picture issues and give people an opportunity to get to know the board members as well as each other, of course, and also to ask questions that might not come up in some of our other meetings, whether it's a pod meeting or coordinators meeting or so on. So that's kind of the purposes of the fireside chats. And we'll probably have this is our second one, we'll probably have 4 a year, and we're really open to ideas. So maybe if you can kind of think about topics that might be interesting, then maybe at the end we'll have an opportunity to just offer those topics for us to consider. So we thought we've been thinking about topics, and of course our first one was really about the beginnings of ElderDog and the heart of ElderDog, and kind of where it came from and how that heart continues to beat every day in the communities across the country, and why it's important to keep that in mind. And we looked at the credo that guides all of our practices and interactions and so on. And in thinking about today's topic, I mean, the toll-free line that Lisa Chance currently manages is really a window into ElderDog. So this is the toll-free line, the 855 number that is on all of our promotional material, our brochures and bookmarks and website and all of that. And so that toll-free line, and Lisa currently, who's managing that may be the very first point of introduction to ElderDog. And so it's kind of, Lisa at this point is kind of the voice of ElderDog to the public. And so our toll-free line is really, really important. And another way to think about it is as kind of metaphorically as a reception desk for our entire organization. And, when you think about that and, that reception desk and then what's all behind that reception desk, you can see that it's a fairly significant role to play. So it is a complex role because it requires not only knowledge about ElderDog and our mandate and our programs and who's who and where, but it also reflects the qualities that are central to what we call our organizational ethic. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about that. I won't go into great detail, but I think it might be useful for those of you who are not familiar with that, and I expect there are many. And then I think that'll lead nicely into Lisa's description and presentation about the toll-free line. So as you would all know, because I'm assuming that you all have your photo IDs, you would all, in your photo IDs, if you haven't yet, you will probably be getting one soon, if you have your police check and photograph. But in the pocket of your photo ID, there are 2 cards. And on the back of one card is our ElderDog credo. And those are kind of the principles that we live by on a daily basis. But we also have another set of principles. And the 2 sets of principles kind of work together. Our ElderDog credo and what we call our organizational ethic, or the qualities that define our organizational ethic. And they work together. And so the organizational ethic kind of defines the culture of ElderDog and how we work, and as a whole organization rather than what we do individually. So ElderDog operates on a general principle or an organizing principle of flexibility within structure. And what that means is that we're guided by a set of really clearly articulated principles rather than strict rules and regulations. And those of you who have carry out your roles, you would have access to those guidelines and principles, and know that when we work, we adhere to those principles, but we're not so rigidly guided by them that we can't step outside of them when it's necessary to do so. So what that means is we have to be creative and responsive to situations that come up. And that enables people to make important, meaningful decisions, while at the same time being consistent and coherent across the organization. So there are certain qualities that underpin that whole principle. And I'm just going to name some of them because Lisa will be picking up on those qualities as they're reflected in her work on the toll-free line. So one of the qualities that guides ElderDog, well, 2 of them really, are creativity and compassion. And creativity continues to lie at the heart of problem solving and growth in the service of our compassionate work. And so what that looks like is we never say, no, we can't do that when we get a request or an inquiry, but rather we say, how can we help? And so that means that we need to be, kind of creative and responsive at the same time as we are compassionate. Of course, the quality of respect pervades all of the work that we do individually and organizationally. Trust is another quality, and we really honor or feel honored by the trust that people place in us as we care for their dogs. We also place trust in the volunteers who work with ElderDog, and in those who we support. And of course, we also trust the processes that guide our work, and sometimes we have to tweak those processes if it's necessary. One of the things about ElderDog that hopefully you're coming to understand is that not only are we complex as an organization, but we reflect a complexity of experiences and circumstances in the work that we do. And so we need to acknowledge those complexities as we make decisions about, how we carry out our work as an organization. Of course, consistent with the focus on respect, our ElderDog is really all about relationships, about fostering relationships between people and their dogs, between volunteers and those we support, and of course, among our volunteers. And as an organization, those relationships to build, to develop, to foster are really important. Just a couple of more. One of the things that's really important as an organization, another quality, is the quality of humility. And that quality of humility is a quality that reflects a need for openness and for generosity of mind and of spirit. And that also speaks to the need to be compassionate and creative. There's no one best way to do anything. So we have to be open to finding the best approach to deal with some of our complex and challenging situations that are presented to us. And of course, that sometimes requires the quality, very often requires the quality of patience. The patience to listen, patience to understand, patience to be thoughtful, and to move forward. Second, getting a funny little. And then finally, the quality of integrity, which is really the moral backbone of ElderDog. So the credo that you work by and the qualities that ElderDog is organized around and the qualities that we lead by really do work in tandem. And so when we were thinking about today's fireside chat, it just seemed like an obvious way to introduce or reflect or exemplify some of those qualities by looking at our the toll-free line. So I'm going to turn it over to Lisa. I just want to say that Lisa has been answering the toll-free line for, she'll tell you how long. I've lost track of time, as I know many people have in this last year. But I did that for many years. From the beginning of ElderDog for several years. And then the toll-free line was managed and answered by Karen Lewis. And I'm sure pretty much everyone would know Karen as a board member, as a longtime member of ElderDog, and as a startup facilitator. And then most recently, Lisa Chance has taken on that role. And this is just one of her, a number of her roles she plays with ElderDog. So I will mute myself and turn it over to Lisa.
Thanks very much, Ardra. Big shoes to fill after having the line managed by both Ardra and Karen, who are really very, very well versed in the business of ElderDog for sure. I don't have that same experience, although I do have a lot of passion for the organization, and I'm learning a lot, kind of learning on my feet, as one would say. But today is not about procedure as much as it is about how ElderDog can be thought of from the perspective of a more big picture, and how we can translate that through the toll-free line. So I would reiterate some of the things that Ardra has said, and one of them is that all of our volunteers do exactly what I think I bring to the toll-free line, and that is to, be kind, be compassionate, be respectful, and there are so many times when you answer that phone that you find somebody on the other end who just really, really needs that. So I'm going to talk a bit first about what actually happens on the toll-free line. I answer the calls that come into the toll-free line across the country. So people can be calling from anywhere. I talk a lot about the weather. They always want to know what it's like in Nova Scotia. And it's interesting to have those conversations because particularly through COVID, people are really interested in how well we're doing in Nova Scotia, and that becomes part of the conversation too. It's really nice to talk to people from a more of a just a conversational point of view. But obviously some of those calls are very serious as well. They're not just calls that are looking for the answers to a few questions or wondering how they can volunteer. Some of them are real serious, but people who call the line, I've made a list, so I'm just going to refer to my list, but most of the calls that I receive are from people who are not currently part of the ElderDog family. So I don't receive calls generally from volunteers, and I don't receive calls from pod executive people or people who have some familiarity with the organization. I typically answer the phone to people who are calling with very little knowledge about ElderDog, which is why, as Ardra says, it's kind of a window into the organization. They're calling because somebody in the medical field has referred them to us, their neighbor, they've seen an article. If they're calling from BC, they have undoubtedly seen one of the many publicity things that have been on the radio and in the newspaper. There's been lots of things that are giving ElderDog some, shining a light on it where people didn't know it existed before. So, but some of the calls that I get obviously dog support for seniors calls. So seniors who call looking for some help, either because they are unable to walk their dog or they've had an injury, have to go to hospital, something like that. Many of the calls are for dog support. But lately, many of the calls have also been wanting to volunteer. How do I get involved? Who do I call? How do I get an application? Those kinds of calls. Sometimes the application is to foster or adopt, and there's been a lot of calls about adopting. It's kind of a tricky situation right now because there seems to be many people looking for a dog, and that's not our main focus. And some people don't understand that, so it's part of the conversation that rehoming is a component of what ElderDog does, but it's certainly not the biggest part. The hardest calls probably are the ones where someone's calling to rehome their dog, and often that's why they're calling, because their first couple of words to me are through tears, and it's a really difficult conversation usually. It's one of those things that people see as a last-ditch effort, and what they really want is for somebody to tell them that that's the brave thing to do, and that they're doing the right thing for their dog. And so I try very hard not to cry myself, and to be compassionate and understanding and give them the options that we can offer. And sometimes that means a short-term foster, and sometimes it means rehoming altogether. But those are difficult calls, and I think it's really important to meet people where they are, understand and respect what they're asking, and understand how difficult, very difficult that would be. Some people are calling and they just want some information. They've gone online and had a look at the website, but for whatever reason, they feel like they have some questions that weren't answered there. And the Facebook page, sometimes gives them a little additional information, but they just want to talk to somebody about what ElderDog is all about and how either they can fit in or how the organization can help them or their families. I sometimes get calls that ask for other people in the organization. So somebody calling looking for Ardra is not uncommon, or they want a particular pod leader, or how do I reach out to somebody in Lunenburg or wherever the case may be. I've had an increasing number of calls from people looking for dog food, and I think that is a Nova Scotia thing, because people know that in Nova Scotia, the ElderDog community does have a food bank. And so some of the calls are people that have found that out somehow and know a senior that is spending money they don't really have to feed their dog, and how can we support that. Donations. I have the ability through the Square app to take donations over the phone, and particularly around holidays, there are a lot of donation calls. People looking to sometimes donate in memory, and sometimes they know something about the organization through a friend and decided that that's what they'll do as Christmas presents or whatever. But most people who donate have a connection somehow to ElderDog, which is interesting. We get calls from vet clinics looking for particular pods. There have been a few calls about the long-term care program, and it's a program that is relatively new, and people are just so delighted to hear that program exists. I had a call a couple of months ago from a woman who is single and elderly, and she has 2 dogs, and her worst fear is that something will happen to her and she doesn't know what will happen to her dogs. And so when I told her about the long-term care program, she was so excited. It was palpable. You could tell that it was just such a relief to her. And so she got the application, she filled it out right away, sent it to me because I was, I guess, the person she thought should have it. I sent it forward, but she has called a couple of times to the toll-free line since and just said, you know, I was just sitting here thinking that Levi will be fine if something happens to me. And it's just such a comfort to her to know that plan is in place. Short-term foster is something that in the beginning, and to just address Ardra's question at the beginning, I've been doing this since September. So I've got a few months under my belt, but not a ton. And I have some statistics that we can sort of think about in terms of the situation we're currently in, whether that has an impact or not. But since September, we didn't have a lot of short-term foster requests in the beginning, but it seems that has increased, where people know now that if they're going into hospital or having surgery or something's happening, that they're unable to find something for their dog in terms of care in the meantime, that ElderDog can potentially support that. So that we do get some of those calls. Recently, we've had 2 or 3 calls about new pod startup, which is exciting. People hear about the organization and they want to get involved. And it's nice to see your face, Catherine, because I know that I've talked to you on the phone about that. But there have been a few people who I have spoken to on the phone, and they are so invested immediately that starting up a pod is something that they're really excited about. So that's always a great conversation. There's been a few about roaming dogs. All of our elder dogs that are involved directly with us have tags. And so if somebody finds a dog that has an ElderDog tag, and we've had a couple of those, we've even had a call where they found the tag and no dog, but we found out that the tag had fallen off quite some time ago and was found on a trail. But to the last 2 that I have here are probably the 2 that I find the most difficult. One of them is grief support, people calling and saying they just don't know how they're going to manage because they've lost their dog and they don't think another dog's going to fix that problem, and they don't know what to do. And I am a math teacher. I'm certainly not qualified to be giving grief support, but it's interesting how they just call to talk. You know, they just want to say to somebody who they know is passionate about animals that this has been really, really tough for them. And so I find those calls difficult, but at the same time, they're incredibly rewarding. But the other one that I find challenging is those people who call and they are asking for something that doesn't really fall within the mandate of ElderDog. So, you know, a 25-year-old person with a 2-year-old dog, and they can't afford their vet bill. That's not really something that is an ElderDog mandate. But as Ardra said, you know, we pride ourselves on never saying no. We say not right now, or we're going to try and do what we can, or not what we usually do, but let's see what we can manage. And I'm just really, really proud of us for always trying to find a way to even support those who are not senior. They aren't senior dogs. And some of the things that we've been able to manage to support. One of the things that I can think about is a man on the Eastern Shore who he just really needed help to pay for his dog's vet bills. He couldn't afford it, and he wasn't a senior, and neither was his dog, but he really loved his dog, and it was everything to him. And without us, he probably wouldn't have been able to have the surgery. And he agreed to pay it back, and arrangements were made, and it was a special case. But you know, we always try to find a way to support people if we can. It's a funny thing, the line, because some days my husband will say to me, how many calls have you gotten today? Because, you know, it feels like it's been 10 or 12. And other days, even days go by, like 2 or 3 days might go by and you don't get a single call. But according to the numbers that I have, there's about 4 calls a day, 3 to 4 calls a day on average. And so some days it feels like the calls come one after the other. The phone just never stops ringing. And other days I think, where are all those ElderDog people? Nobody's calling me. But it averages about 4 a day. And it's allowed me to have a window into the organization that I wouldn't otherwise have. I get a chance to talk to some seniors who are so appreciative of the help. I have lots of conversations with ElderDog volunteers, usually through email, but these opportunities are really lovely because they allow you to see people's faces and have conversations one-on-one. One of the things I try to do when I get a call, and as I would say, I'm new to this, but I try really hard to approach every call kind of the same way, that I don't answer the phone right away if I don't have the time to dedicate to the call that it might require, because whoever's on the other end is calling because they've got something they either want to ask or want to talk about. So if I'm in the middle of making supper, I typically don't answer the phone if I don't have 10 minutes that I can dedicate. But when I answer the phone, I'm all in, so that, you know, if they want to talk to me for 15 or 20 minutes, I typically, I'm okay with that. You know, a little bit of conversation's a good thing. And I think that attitude of generosity and just being willingness to listen and be respectful is really, really important. I don't know how many people were able to tune in to the last workshop, but it was all about how to talk to senior adults. And I think that there was a lot of really good information in that workshop about how the toll-free line works as well. That, you know, you can't make assumptions. You have to ask the questions so that you're sure what the situation is, and being respectful and listening and making sure you have the details correct. And, you know, I think it's an important job in that way. The mandate and culture and attitude of the phone operator. I've had lots of conversations with Ardra, and I know Karen has expressed the same desire when we've talked about the line before. It's just one of those things that is able to reach out to the community in a way that many other parts of ElderDog cannot. Pretty much everybody has the ability to pick up the phone and make a phone call in a way that we as volunteers in the community maybe can't reach people always. So I think it's a really important part of what ElderDog is and what we do. I would say that there are a lot of people who call the line who are unsure when they're calling, whether they're calling for somebody else. I without too much detail, I would just relay a story from the other day that a really kind man called, and he was really concerned about his mom, and she's in the hospital, and she has a little dog that means everything to her. And he said, you know, I just don't know what I'm going to do. The dog's currently not being looked after very well at a neighbor's, and what possibly could you do to help? I was talking to a social worker in my community, and they suggested I call ElderDog. So I described some of the programs that we offer, and he said, you know, if I can get my mom convinced that maybe a short-term foster would be a good idea. I think if she knew that the dog was in a nice, caring home, even the rehoming component wouldn't be nearly as difficult a subject to broach, because the transition from the dog living in her home with her to living in somebody else's home with them has already happened. And I thought, that's not something I've ever even considered. But, you know, I don't think about, because my dog's laying here on the couch with me, I don't think about what would happen for somebody who's in that situation. So I would say that the line is a teaching tool for me day to day. I learn something new every single day. Every call has something unique about it. And that particular one sticks with me because I feel like he was so desperate to not upset his mother and she's so desperate to make sure somebody was looking after her dog that I think they felt like they didn't have very many options, and ElderDog stepped in and gave them a few, which is really, really great. It's really the purpose of ElderDog's work. I think that from a philosophical point of view, the last thing that I would say about the toll-free line is that it's an opportunity for us to share some of the best parts of serving our communities. And for the volunteers who choose to get involved in ElderDog, I think the rewards are numerous. I have, as Ardra said, 2 roles. And not to confuse the two, sometimes the emails that I send out to pods come, well, always, they come from the secretary email, but that's a separate role for me. As the secretary of the board of directors, it's a very different role than the phone line is. And I actually report to the board of directors with a log every time we meet and let them know how many calls, what the nature of the call was, those sort of things. But I think that the phone line is one of those things that allows us to be connected in a way that we wouldn't otherwise be able to. And I feel pretty privileged to have the opportunity to do this job. I think it's one that I really enjoy, and I hope I'm doing a reasonable job at. But I think it's one of those that is really super important. I would open up to questions if anybody had any specifics that they would like to ask, or something that I haven't covered that they think is important or would like to discuss.
I have a question.
Hey, Jillian.
Hi, Lisa. I was just curious, do you have a separate phone for the ElderDog line, or do you use your own home phone number?
Well, that's an interesting question, and it's not something that I had really considered when I started it, but no, I don't have a home phone, so I use my cell phone. And I'm sure that you can understand that with many calls that I call back, they would be able to see my number. And I don't really mind that. Some people are really particular about other people having their phone number, and I'll just give you some perspective. I'm a high school math teacher, and I have my phone number on my whiteboard. So I'm obviously not somebody that's super particular about who has my number. So I don't mind if somebody calls the toll-free line, and then when I call them back, they can see my number. Although I do always try to use the block feature, but I don't always remember. But I have to say, I'm really impressed by those that are interested in contacting the number, because it is not something that has ever been abused. I don't get an exorbitant number of calls, and it wouldn't matter whether they had my number or the 800 number, they could call me back anyway.
Also, are you able to take weekends off, or are you pretty much on all the time?
No weekends off, no. But I do go to the cottage. We have a cottage on Little Tancook Island in Nova Scotia, and it has great cell service. So no, my phone goes everywhere I go. But like I said, I don't answer it if I don't have the time required to dedicate to a call. So on one hand, yes, I'm very tied to the phone because it's my responsibility to answer it quickly and you know, whenever the phone rings, so to speak. But I also work full time. So obviously I can't answer the phone during the school day. But I have a system. I have a book, and I check my messages, write all the numbers and names and details in a book, and then I get back to each one of them. And my husband very much enjoys the callbacks because he gets to listen in on all those conversations and hear all the wonderful things about ElderDog. So yes, I'm on the phone line all the time, but it's not the intrusion you might think it is. It's a very special responsibility that I take very seriously.
And thank you for doing this presentation as well.
Oh, you're really welcome. No problem.
Hi, Lisa. It's Cindy from Comox Valley. How are you today?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
Wonderful, thanks. I'm sorry I joined late, but it was great to be part of this. In replying to your clients, what kind of a turnaround time are you trying to achieve?
Do you mean when somebody calls me, how quickly do I intend to get back to them?
Right, yes.
Okay. So I don't think it's ever been more than 12 hours. And those longer periods of time are usually people in your situation, people in BC. It takes a little longer to get back to, because when I get up in the morning and can return some calls, you are in bed. And when I get home, you're usually at work. So I do find the time change to be a little challenging, but I make a rule for myself that if I am not at work, I get back to them within an hour if I can. And when I'm at work, I make sure that everybody gets a call back before I go to bed.
Lovely, thank you. And for the presentation as well.
Okay, you're welcome.
Hi, Lisa.
Hi.
Great presentation. Thank you.
You're welcome.
When you have people that phone that are looking for grief support, so they've just had their dog euthanized and they're really having a tough time coping, do you refer them to someone, or what do you do with
I
that?
have never had somebody call that has been so distraught that a conversation hasn't been helpful for them. I know there are lots of people out there that probably could benefit from grief support, and it is something that ElderDog has talked a great deal about. You know, at our board meetings and in other situations, we've talked about how to offer that service more regularly. But I think it's such a personal thing that I suspect the people who are really struggling are not calling me. I think the people who are calling me are the people who think that there might be somebody compassionate just to, you know, listen for a few minutes because of the nature of the organization. So no is the answer to your question. I have not referred anybody on, but I don't think I've encountered a situation so serious that somebody seemed to need that in the way that I think you're asking. Not that I'm qualified to necessarily to know that, but people who call just to chat, I would say that those are the people that I've encountered most.
Thank you.
In your experience with the line, Karen, do you think that that's fair, that the people who mostly call just to chat would be those people that have lost a pet?
Yeah, absolutely. And usually it's like you say, they just want somebody to talk to.
Yeah.
If it seems to be a little bit more than that, I've often, because we do have people within our organization that are qualified to deal with that. And I will ask, or I did ask them if they want it to be referred.
Okay.
And talk about that a little bit, but usually you're correct. Usually it's not that in depth and we can handle it. And yeah, and they hang up, and I think they're quite, you know, they move on.
Yeah.
Lisa,
Yes.
and Karen, I'd like to hear what Ardra has to say to this. I mean, Ardra has qualifications in grief counselling, and of course, we set up a sister organisation, Friends of ElderDog Canada. Well, sorry, Friends of ElderDog Canada, which is located in Nova Scotia, mind you, and has a specific purpose of helping people deal with grief.
Did you want me to respond to that, Karen?
I was just wondering whether you might have something to say. That's all.
Well, I mean, I think both Lisa and Karen, you know, have commented on what most people want, and that is an opportunity to have somebody listen with compassion to their situation. And of course, as we know, it's very difficult in North American society to express grief for the loss of an animal, except to those you know or suspect quite strongly who will support and understand the grief that you're experiencing. And so I think that's why people, you know, call ElderDog, because you know, because clearly by our name alone, we must know something about losing dogs. And so, the most important thing is to give people an opportunity to, to listen, to speak, and just to feel heard and understood. And so the Friends of ElderDog Society, I'm sure that Lisa, in her conversations, when appropriate, would mention our butterfly release that we have annually, where we have a memorial service for dogs who have passed away, and where we commemorate those dogs in a very special, moving way, where when everyone gathers together, that the person standing next to you is experiencing the same kind of grief or emotion that you are. And it's a very safe place, and a really important place for people to know about. And then, of course, we have our Place to Pause, which is our chapel, which is dedicated to commemoration of dogs, and people can visit there and just reflect on their relationship. And we also have, and this is not all that well known, we also have an online site called Place to Pause, where people can pay tribute with photographs and stories or whatever. And that's a really, really important part of the whole grieving process, is to tell stories and to acknowledge your beloved companion. And so those are not necessarily kind of the direct counseling, but they're certainly tools and resources that we have through ElderDog and through Friends of ElderDog that we can offer people as a way of supporting their loss and helping them through that grief process. Is that what you were kind of getting at, Gary? Yeah, okay.
Interestingly, there's lots of people who, if I mention the butterfly release in those kinds of conversations, are shocked that there's a public display of people's grief and affection for their pets.
Yeah.
And that alone is a comforting thing to them.
Yes, absolutely. And, well, of course, for, excuse me, for people who are in close enough proximity to visit, both for the butterfly release and to visit the chapel, many people come again and again, because we have many, it's a place where people can also place an urn or a memento of their dog, and they can come back again and again and to spend time with their dog, with their dog's memory. And that's really important. We have people who come back repeatedly just to be with the memory. And that's just another way of supporting that important relationship.
It's worth noting as well, I think, that people who can't get to Nova Scotia also participate in this event by obtaining butterflies for us to release.
Yes, absolutely.
The other thing about the grief component of the calls is that I would suspect that I've received a few more of those in this time of lockdown, because I think people just feel like they don't have someone to talk to. So, people that might have otherwise gone to the library or a coffee shop and, spoken to even a stranger, don't have that option. So, calling somebody seems like an alternative for them, which is interesting.
Hi, Lisa.
Hi.
Hi. Yeah, just want a quick question, because I'm new volunteer and I'm looking after the Facebook page for Toronto West, or West Toronto, we call it. I do not have a phone number lined up on that page, and I've been looking at every other part.
Okay.
Some of them have, and some of them have a local number. I just wonder, is it okay if I just put that 800 number in?
Absolutely.
Okay, no. Until we decide if we need a local number. or
Well,
not.
and you may not decide that that's important to you. You can always use the 800 number, and anything that comes in for Toronto West will be directed back to the pod.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
Lois, were you trying to get in?
To say something, no, just
Okay.
listening. Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
Hi, can I ask a question, Lisa?
Absolutely.
Hi. I understand that a situation whereby the dog is the senior, but the owner is not, would also qualify as an elder dog.
Certainly.
Okay, I was wondering, have you gotten any of those calls? Because I'm a little bit concerned that that's sort of a client group that we're not reaching. The people always think of, oh, the senior, yes, and their dog. But it can work the other way where the client is really the dog, and then we work with the owner.
Well, I can't obviously speak to those calls that we don't get and how many there would be, but I can say that we've gotten quite a number of people who have senior dogs. And I had a call a couple of months ago about a dog who was 14 or 15, maybe even 16. And the concern was this person was moving overseas and was looking for, you know, what can be done. I don't have anywhere for my dog to go, and the dog can't go with me. And so ElderDog was an option. Now he ended up being able to take the dog with him, which was awesome, but he wasn't sure because of the age whether they would be able to do that or not. But particularly in Nova Scotia, we've gotten quite a number of calls from people who are in their 40s and 50s who are not considered senior, but have a senior dog and need support of some kind. But it may be a demographic who doesn't feel they qualify or fit with ElderDog. But senior dogs and senior people, yep, either one.
Okay, it's just that I'm in Vancouver and I've never heard of anybody contacting us who's not a senior and has the senior dog. And I'm the communications coordinator over here. So I'm
Okay.
it's just something I want to keep in mind. Thank you.
Well, and it might be because if you're not a senior yourself and you have a senior dog, you have less needs for support from an external organization, maybe. I don't know.
Right, that's a consideration. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Just as a volunteer, as a heads up, the dog that I walk is a senior dog. He's about 14, but his owners are not senior.
Okay, there you go.
They're not hugely mobile, but they're not senior. They're in their 50s at most, I would think.
Okay, so I suppose that's a really good example that somebody with a senior dog who's in their 30s or 40s, but is potentially disabled or for some reason can't do the walking themselves, they would certainly qualify.
I think this is a good example of ElderDog being flexible.
Yep. Yep. Anybody else with a question? We don't need to keep you any longer than necessary, but if you've got questions, I'm more than happy to entertain them, as are the other board members that are present, I'm sure.
I have a question.
Sure.
I'm brand new to this and I don't even have a badge yet, but I'm wondering, I have a lot of questions about the process, and I'm wondering how you get a call. Where does it go from there? Like, does it go out to, I'm in BC, so does it go out to a local coordinator and they make the decisions about the arrangement with a senior from there, and then contact a volunteer? How does that work?
Yeah, so I would just say generally that when I get a call that was, I'll use Vancouver as an example, if it was somebody in Vancouver, and Vancouver for me is kind of tricky, I have to say, because I'm learning that my geography as a math teacher is not that great. So Vancouver is one of those places that's got a lot of geography to cover. So I find the place that is most reasonable in terms of where the client is located, and I connect with the ElderDog volunteer in that area, usually depending on the request. So if it's for dog support, I would connect with the dog support coordinator and the leader and pass off the information, and then that's my job. then it's their thing from there. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, there's be other steps that I'm not aware of yet that I'll find out.
Okay, and the other steps are more pod specific, I suspect.
That's what I'm getting at, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
So I think, are you saying that you're wanting to be involved more and you're not at that point yet?
No.
Say again?
I understand you're saying you want to be involved more in the local organization, but you're not at that point yet because you're waiting.
Like I said, I haven't even got my badge yet, so I don't know anything about what the next steps are.
Yeah, okay.
Are there other board members wanting to comment, or maybe Karen, if there's anything you wanted to add from your experience with the toll-free line or anything before we wrap up?
No, I just would reiterate everything that Lisa said. Basically, I mean, I think as we have grown, and we are growing so quickly, obviously that's going to make for more calls coming in, and it's nice to, I dearly miss the line. It was a great love, but Lisa, you are doing a fabulous job. I don't know if anybody's told you that, but you are.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that.
So we're getting calls from people, certainly more veterinarian clinics, the more we're becoming known, which is fantastic. I'm sure you've noticed an increase in that, Lisa, with people needing to, particularly seniors, dropping off their beloved companions on way to a care facility because they can't take their dog with them and they don't really have any other options. So they're dropping them off to be euthanized. Unfortunately, the vets are calling us and saying, here's little Fido here, can you help? And absolutely, we always can. So that's one thing. That's one of the good things happening with the increased awareness of ElderDog. But also, and Ardra spoke to this as well, people who don't know who to call because society dictates that it's just a dog and you shouldn't be, your feelings are not, you should just kind of keep them to yourself, and that whole grief aspect of it. And I remember one call, and I shared this with some board members one time that I got, and I know Lisa, you've gotten a few similar to this too, where a gal had to leave her pregnant heart dog with somebody to look after, and because she had to go in the hospital. When she came home, the dog was dead because she froze to death with a belly full of puppies. And I will never forget that, never ever. But she called because she just didn't know who to call, because who would understand her grief. And we chatted for probably well over 2 hours. And I, of course, told her all about Place to Pause. And I told her about, I suggested if she wanted, we have people that are qualified if she wanted to speak with somebody. But those types of calls, had we not existed when she needed somebody to talk to, she would have probably gone on, and gotten who knows what. I mean, she said she was at the brink of jumping over the bridge. And I mean, people do get that desperate and do get that engulfed in their own grief and not with nowhere to turn. So it made me feel good to know that she did hear about ElderDog in some way and did call. So those types of calls are of course, they're very memorable, but you also realize how important we are to everybody in many, many ways. But yeah.
I just have one question as well regarding the age of the dogs, because I know that we are targeting senior dogs. If a young couple has a senior dog, then we can offer service. But what if it's the other way around? What if it's a senior that has a younger dog? Do we have an age minimum or age limit of the dogs?
No, we just got a paperwork today from a pod, from a new dog care support situation where the person was or is in her 80s and she has a 5-month-old.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, no, it's yeah, there's no minimum age.
Good, that's good. Because I'm new as well, like Ed, I don't have my badge yet. And I don't have my name up there. My name's
You don't have your name up there. What is your name?
Catherine Descharmes.
Okay, Catherine.
Yes. And hi, Karen. Hi, Ardra. I'm in Peterborough, Ontario, and we're working to build a pod. I have one volunteer and I'm looking for more.
Excellent.
So I think this is exciting. I'm looking forward to doing some good here.
It wasn't that long ago that you called.
No, I know, Lisa. But
yeah, that's great.
I'm a retiree. I need to fill some time. So
good.
Yeah.
Good.
Well,
it's an important part of the story, though.
Oh, I was just going to say that. Go ahead, Gary.
Oh, okay. What was your first name again? Kathy, was it? No.
Catherine.
Yeah, Catherine.
Yes.
So an important part of the story, Catherine, is that in a sense, ElderDog was conceived just a few kilometers south of where you are.
Oh, really?
Because Ardra lived in
Garden Hill.
Garden Hill. Yes, you're right. That is not far from here.
Yes, yeah, and so I think Ardra's dream always was to have a pod in Peterborough and maybe Coburg, Port Hope, but none of those things are set in stone yet. So that would be wonderful if you could get started in Peterborough.
Well, our demographic in Peterborough certainly calls for it. We have a lot of seniors here. And I actually found out about this through a friend of mine who moved from the area to Nova Scotia in Yarmouth, and she's getting involved there. And we're friends on Facebook now. I'm actually more in contact with her now than I was when she lived here. We actually have lunch meetings over Zoom or FaceTime that we didn't have time for when she lived here. So
that's funny.
Yeah,
that's very exciting.
It'll be good. Yeah.
I'm still struggling with the idea that an 80-year-old got a 5-month-old pup.
Well, that's another whole issue, isn't it? Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where they get the energy, I don't know, because I have a 3-year-old dog and he's just starting to settle down.
Yeah.
Well, I guess the other way to look at that is a good thing that they're reaching out to ElderDog rather than the poor puppy not having the stimulation and the exercise and having all of the other needs met. So at least we're able to contribute to the puppy's wellness and by extension, the seniors as well.
Which brings up the question of what role we can play in training. I'm a dog trainer, and I would love to be able to work with a situation like that.
Well, that's something you could certainly talk with your dog care support coordinator or pod leader or whatever about, for sure. Yeah.
What pod are you with? Is it Ed?
It's Ed, yes, and I'm in Kamloops, and I don't know my pod leader or anything about it right here. I don't know if she's in Kelowna or Kamloops or wherever.
It's Tana Smith, and she's actually in Vernon.
Oh, in Vernon, okay.
But you'll all be looped in, yeah.
Okay.
I should have recognized that's where you were standing in front of.
Sorry?
I should have recognized the image behind you.
Oh, yeah, Kamloops, yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, I did have a comment.
Okay.
For the fellow there in Kelowna. I just a couple of weeks ago reached out to our pod leader, because I'm a walker, one of the dog walkers, saying that I needed some help with a dog I'm having difficulty with walking. And was wondering if there was any dog trainers. So it's interesting that you are a dog trainer. And if they can't find anybody, it'd be great to touch base just to get some tips of what to do.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
The other, Lois, and I don't know if you were able to attend the workshop on canine behavior and training. Were you able to?
I missed those. I saw it after the fact.
Okay, the video?
I didn't see any. Can I still see it?
Oh, yes, absolutely. It's
Oh,
available.
okay.
It's an excellent recording by a very experienced dog trainer. And so you might get some tips there in the interim as well. And
Lois,
Okay.
if you want to send me an email, I'm happy to send you the links.
Oh, okay. Who's Lisa? Who's
Lisa, yeah, it's secretary.elderdog@gmail.com.
ElderDog@gmail.com. Okay. So just saying, really, there is a role for anybody who is a dog trainer, because I think I've had trouble with 2 dogs that I've walked, older dogs that didn't have training. And it's really difficult when there's big, strong dogs and you're trying to walk them and, oh.
Did you say you're with Kelowna?
Sorry?
Are you with Kelowna, did you say?
No, I said I was talking to the fellow in Kelowna.
Oh.
I'm in Dartmouth here.
Okay.
In Halifax, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's just saying it's nice to know there are dog trainers in the group, because there sure is a need, I think, for that.
yeah, and so do spend some time with the video. I think that will be certainly an interim help for you.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
You know, Lisa, it might be an interesting thing to work up a database, say, for example, of people who are trainers, who are dog trainers, but are also volunteering for ElderDog, just so that when you get calls, you might be able to refer people.
Yeah. I know they're looking for somebody for me right now.
We would have that kind of information. I saw Elizabeth on the call earlier, our database manager. We would have that kind of information in our database. Yeah.
Just have a question for Catherine. Catherine, you're in Peterborough?
Yes, I'm in Peterborough, Ontario.
Yes. What's the status of your pod? You're just starting up, are you?
Just starting up. Karen's been very helpful. We've had a couple of phone calls. I just have my police check. It's in the mail.
Oh. I have a friend in Keene that she has recently retired, and I was just waiting for the opportune moment where I could recruit her as a volunteer. So I want to tell her that there's a Peterborough pod starting up. How would she contact you?
Probably through Lisa, would it be?
Great. Okay.
Yeah,
Or
no,
Karen.
or Karen, yes, or Karen.
Is Keene near Peterborough?
Keene is near Peterborough, yeah. It's about 10-minute drive.
Yeah,
it's not far at all. It's actually south of Peterborough. Yeah.
Yeah, so she can reach out to either Karen or Lisa. That's great.
Yeah,
Okay.
if she wants to call the toll-free line, I'll certainly forward it on to Karen.
Perfect.
My
Okay.
information will be loaded soon. I still don't have my badge because I haven't had my picture taken. I need a new hairdo first. So.
Okay, thank you. Well, good luck with your pod.